They called it the Black Vein, a forgotten mine hidden deep in the serrated ribs of the Appalachian Mountains, where mist clung to the trees like rotting flesh and the wind carried whispers that defied the laws of sound. It had been abandoned for over a century after a series of accidents the old-timers barely spoke of, except in hushed warnings after too many drinks. And yet, for Evelyn Grady, amateur urban explorer and self-proclaimed seeker of the forbidden, the mine was irresistible. The story had been simple. 6 miners went missing in 1893, the shaft sealed in haste after the last. Frantic journal entries detailed something emerging from the rock walls, something with too many mouths. The collapse was blamed on faulty supports, but legend spoke of blood seeping from the stone and screams that never stopped echoing. Evelyn, armed with her camera, flashlight, and a worn copy of those ancient journal entries, stood at the rusted mouth of the mine as the sun bled out behind skeletal trees. The entrance was half choked with brush, jagged boards nailed in a crisscrossed X barely clinging to the stone. She could already smell it, something deeper than mildew, older than decay. The others, her boyfriend Mark, his brother Jonas, and her best friend Claire, were less enthusiastic, but peer pressure and the lure of internet fame brought them along. They pushed through the barrier easily, splintered wood groaning under their weight. Inside, the air thickened into a syrup of mold and something more acrid. Their lights flickered as the rocky throat swallowed them. Ancient rails lay rusted and half buried in the dirt, leading into the belly of the earth. They passed discarded helmets, corroded picks, and piles of bones that looked far too clean to be animal. The first hour was nothing but stale air and crumbling walls, the group half laughing, nerves frayed but manageable. But then they found the first markings. Scratched into the stone with desperate, frantic hands, spirals, jagged runes, crude depictions of eyeless faces with gaping maws. As Evelyn ran her fingers over one, a sharp tingle crawled up her spine. A pressure behind her eyes, like something unseen leaning close. Jonas, the most skeptical, brushed it off with a nervous laugh. "Primitive graffiti," he said. But his hands trembled as he pulled out his lighter, flame dancing in air that felt suddenly colder. Then the noise came. Distant at first, a sound like teeth chattering, but faster, unnatural. It echoed off stone in unnatural patterns. The air seemed to pulse. They debated turning back, but Evelyn insisted on pressing deeper. The mine sloped down in uneven steps, passing through areas where the supports had rotted to splinters, where the darkness seemed thicker than physics allowed. Every breath tasted of rust and old rot. Mark caught the first glimpse, a figure, far ahead, barely more than a shadow, but it moved in spasms, limbs jerking as if pulled by invisible strings. The flashlights caught only fragments, a pale face stretched wide in a soundless scream, eyes reflecting light with a wet, hungry gleam. Then it vanished. Panic set in. They argued, some wanted to flee, but the entrance felt so impossibly far now, as if the mine itself had grown. Every corridor looked the same. Mark's compass spun wildly. Their phones had long since lost signal. It was Jonas who stumbled on the next horror, a pile of miners' helmets, neatly stacked in a grotesque pyramid, each one with dark, rust-colored smears across the brow. Beneath them lay bones, hundreds, twisted and fused together as if melted. The whispering started then, not just from the depths, but from the walls themselves, as if the stone carried voices. Evelyn could hear her name, over and over, dry and rasping, from 100 mouths. Then they heard it, footsteps behind them, too many footsteps. They ran. The mine swallowed them deeper, the ancient stone vibrating beneath their frantic footsteps. The light from their flashlights seemed to shrink, the air thick with oppressive cold. The whispers intensified, now accompanied by skittering sounds, wet dragging noises that defied identification. They reached a junction, 3 tunnels yawning into blackness, each marked by rusted signs in archaic lettering. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. One of the signs read, "The Mouth." "No," Claire whispered, trembling. "We need to go back. Now." But the way back was gone. The path they'd come from collapsed. The very rock seemed to have shifted behind them, closing like a throat. The realization hit like ice. The mine was alive, reshaping itself to keep them within its iron belly. Mark began hyperventilating. Jonas cursed, pounding futile fists against unyielding stone. Evelyn, still driven by equal parts terror and obsession, chose the center path. The others followed, as if magnetized by something unseen. The tunnel narrowed unnaturally, the walls closing in with grotesque, vein-like patterns carved into the stone. Their lights flickered, batteries draining at impossible speed. The deeper they went, the more organic the walls became. Wet patches oozed black ichor, the air thick with the smell of rotted meat. Then they saw the faces. Embedded in the stone were human visages, some skeletal, some twisted in agony, mouths agape in eternal screams. Eyeless sockets wept thick, tar-like fluid. Some of the faces moved, only slightly, but undeniably alive. Lips twitched. Tongues writhed. Claire screamed. A low vibration started, a deep hum that rattled their teeth. From the walls, from the very ground, came something beyond sound, a pressure, a pulse, like the heartbeat of a vast, buried thing. The walls pulsed in rhythm. The faces moaned. Jonas lost control first. He dropped his flashlight and fell to his knees, clutching his skull, shrieking. His nose bled in dark streams as he convulsed. Evelyn and Mark pulled him upright, dragging him through the whispering, weeping corridor as Claire sobbed uncontrollably. Then came the first physical manifestation. A figure slithered from the ceiling, lank, emaciated, limbs far too long, pale flesh slick with black secretion. Its face, a mimicry of human horror, featureless save for an impossibly wide mouth, filled with concentric rings of teeth that clicked in rhythmic chatter. They ran, but it followed, skittering on limbs that bent the wrong way. Evelyn's flashlight caught flashes of its wet, gleaming teeth, its eyeless sockets. They burst into a wider chamber, a cavern. Stalactites dripped with viscous, dark fluid. In the center lay a pit, perfectly round, edges too smooth to be natural. Something breathed from within that pit. And all around, the walls were moving, hundreds of mouths, opening and closing, whispering in dead tongues, spewing flecks of black saliva. The entity behind them didn't attack. It watched, teeth chattering in hideous rhythm. Jonas, blood streaming from his eyes, whispered, "It's awake." They made camp, or the closest thing to it, inside the cavern, nerves shredded, minds teetering on the edge. Jonas was barely responsive, shivering, muttering nonsense about veins in the rock and things beneath the skin of the world. The pit exhaled cold drafts that smelled of ancient death. The walls pulsed with unsettling organic movements, the whispers never ceasing. Evelyn felt something pulling her consciousness, her thoughts unraveling like threads. Sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw faces, those faces in the stone, their agony endless, their mouths open in silent screams. Mark scouted a possible path out, returning after an hour, wild-eyed, claiming the tunnels had shifted again. Claire wept until her throat bled. The mine had them. They all knew it. Then the chanting began. Low. Subhuman. Voices without bodies, calling from the pit. The ground quivered. Pieces of the ceiling fell. Bones, human bones, rose from the floor, arranged by invisible hands into grotesque effigies. Some of them still had scraps of flesh clinging. And then, it emerged. From the pit rose a thing that defied sanity. Pale flesh stretched over an impossible frame, limbs that split and fused as it moved. Its face was a swirling mass of teeth, hundreds of them, rotating like a saw, whispering in voices layered upon each other. No eyes. No clear features. Just hunger. Claire snapped, charging the thing with a rusted pickaxe she'd found. It barely twitched as she struck, the weapon embedded in its flesh as if in soft clay. The creature opened a new mouth, right where its stomach should be, and swallowed her. Alive. Her screams echoed long after her body vanished inside the roiling flesh. Mark and Evelyn fled, dragging the incoherent Jonas. The tunnels twisted, changed, the walls pulsing, birthing new offshoots in real time. They no longer knew which way was up or down. But one word rang through Evelyn's mind, over and over, burned into her consciousness from the chanting of the stone: feed. Hours, or days, time fractured, passed in disjointed flight. Jonas succumbed completely, his skin turning gray, veins blackening. Mark and Evelyn pressed on, torches sputtering. They found a second cavern, deeper still, a place of pure nightmare. The ceiling stretched high into darkness, vast and cathedral-like, walls carved with impossible glyphs. In the center stood a monolith, a column of blood-red stone, slick with something alive, pulsing like a heart. Corpses circled the base, some fresh, some centuries old, all positioned as if in worship, mouths sewn permanently open. Mark vomited bile. The monolith spoke. Not in words, but in impressions, in waves of despair and hunger that bypassed thought and burned into the soul. Evelyn fell to her knees, ears bleeding, visions of ancient rituals and timeless voids flooding her mind. She saw the miners, the first sacrifices, their bodies twisted into the rock, made one with the living mine. Mark tried to pull her away, but it was too late. From the monolith came tendrils, fluid, sinuous. They lashed Mark's legs, pulling him close. He screamed, the stone opening like a mouth, swallowing him whole. Evelyn ran, alone now, pursued by whispers and the soft, wet footsteps of unseen things. Her flashlight died. She descended further. The final descent was not walked, but crawled, dragged by unseen hands. Evelyn barely registered her own movements, mind frayed to ribbons. She passed tunnels made of flesh, walls breathing, pulsing. Mouths in the stone whispered memories not her own. At last, she reached it, the heart. A cavern vast beyond measure. The walls were not stone, but teeth. The ceiling dripped with translucent slime. In the center beat the living heart of the mine, a vast, wet organ embedded in stone, pumping black ichor through pulsing veins that stretched into every tunnel, every wall. Faces swam beneath the translucent surface: Mark, Claire, Jonas, others, ancient miners, children, animals, all devoured, all fused into one eternal organism. Evelyn felt her mind shatter. The heart opened. It sang, not in sound, but in pure knowledge, the truth of a God that was not dead but sleeping in stone, its body miles wide, its dreams infecting the world above. Evelyn screamed until her throat split. Her body dissolved into the walls, her consciousness swallowed into the living flesh of the mine. The black vein pulsed once more. It was awake. And it was hungry.